Hi everyone, Lisa Haven here. For years, I have been warning on my channel about the globalist plan of Agenda 2030 and how they want to use that plan to implement their rules and legislation and authoritarian dictatorship, not only over the United States of America, but over the globe. However, they had one massive bump in their plan, and that is the United States of America and their capitalist system. Well, it seems via this COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, real pandemic, but they are using that to basically implement their Agenda 2030 agenda, which, by the way, was formerly known as Agenda 21 or Agenda 2021. You see, the original timeline was to get it all done by next year. However, they didn't feel that they could meet that timeline, so they pushed it out a little bit. But with this virus, it seems they're back on track for what they want. And in today's report, I'm going to share to you some important information about how they are trying to implement these plans and use this pandemic to do the most devious parts of their plan. But take a look at this article on technocracy.news. Pandemic plan to usher in the United Nations Agenda 2030 agenda 10 years early. It goes on to state, sustainable development, also known as technocracy, is the endgame of the global elite who want control over all resources on planet Earth, including people. The Great Panic of 2020 has been weaponized to create the biggest economic coup in the history of the world. I would again note that control over political structures is incidental to control over all economic functions. When technocracy prevails, elected politicians of all stripes will be summarily dismissed, and engineers and scientists will run the world directly. For citizens, this is the essential of scientific dictatorship. There is no need for representatives of government because systems will be run autonomously via an algorithm. The threat of killing capitalism and free enterprise is very real and most definitely an existential threat to America as we have known it for over 200 years. And that was written by the Technocracy News editor. Let me make something really clear. Globalists and the United Nations have been after America for quite some time. They have wanted to control us, but we have stood in their way because of our economic power. Well, with this pandemic, it is completely obliterating our economy and that power that we had. In order to implement their full Agenda 2030, Agenda 21 agendas, they had to break our country down. And this pandemic has done just that. And just like Technocracy News writer has said, the end game is the global elite who want to control not only the resources, but the people. And they're using this pandemic to do it. Want to know some of the goals that they're implementing? Well, let me show you via their sustainable development goals. There are 17 of them. I'm just going to flash it up on the screen because you guys have seen them before. You read them. You can pause it if you like. But goal number 3 is one I'm going to hone in on. And it states this: ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. Now, specifically within the goals are sub-goals. Goal number 3.8 states, achieve universal healthcare coverage, which is a socialism style of healthcare, including financial risk protection, access to quality essential healthcare and services, and access to safe, effective, quality, and affordable essential medicines and vaccines for all. In other words, America's capitalist healthcare system, America's entire system has to be socialized. And what does this do? Goal 3.8, it talks specifically about that. And vaccines for all. Vaccines. What can this pandemic do? Well, they're already talking about forced vaccinations and having papers in order to get your vaccines and be able to go back to work or be able to go in society. You see, these have been the agenda for quite some time. And now it seems as if they can accomplish that agenda. Take a look at what the World Health Organization had to say, because they don't want to leave anybody behind. Here it is, WHO.int, Immunization Agenda 2030, a global strategy to leave no one behind. The goal is obvious. They want to vaccinate you all, and they want to take over the healthcare system. Look what's happening to our healthcare system right now. They locked down all the states, right? For the majority of the states are locked down. They stopped surgeries. Well, what happens when you stop surgeries? Hospitals lose funding. Hospitals lose staff. Your doctors start being let off. Your doctors are told you can't even see people in the office unless it's an emergency. So now your doctors are laying off. Your pediatricians, you name it. They're laying off staff. So when we open up suddenly again, there's going to be an overwhelmed system. Well, now we're going to have to find a solution to that, right? A problem that was caused by them. But that's not the only goal that could be accomplished through this pandemic, right? Let's check out goal number 16, which states, promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. But 16.9 hidden in there is something quite devious. By 2030, provide legal identity for all, including birth registration. That means they want some kind of national ID. And keep in mind, this national ID would likely have your immunization records on it, all your private information, your medical history. It's not just a basic ID. If you dig a little deep into this, there's an organization called ID 2020. Here's their website, id2020.org, and they, again, have a no left behind policy. But on that website, I've already done a report on that, so I don't want to dive back into it, but basically they talk about an all-inclusive ID, not just for some people, but for all people in the world. And as you can see, the plan's underway. Think about what Bill Gates and Fauci are promoting right now. They're promoting something that we haven't heard since Stalin's era or Hitler's era. With papers, please, prove that you've been vaccinated. Prove that you've bought my vaccine that I told you to take, regardless with how harmful it was. Now, one last thing that I want to touch on is this, because I think it ties in very well. But the World Economic Forum is another globalist organization. And back in November 2016, they made a couple of predictions that I want to show you, because these predictions with air quotes, predictions, are just coincidentally coming to pass. And I'm not going to go over all 8 of them, but take a look here. 8 predictions for the world in 2030. And I'm, again, only reading a few of them. And here's the first one here. All products will become services. Are you ready? I don't own anything. I don't own a car. I don't own a house. I don't own appliances. I don't own clothes. Shopping is a distant memory. And basically, it's a new kind of society where nothing you own belongs to you. It only belongs to the authoritarian dictators, the tyrannical leaders, your technocrats who have taken over. So this is kind of something we can see with the pandemic, right? Obviously, they've got a long way to go on that, but think about some of the socialized style of government that we're hearing people like AOC and Anaya Presley and Fauci talk about. You see, Fauci is already talking about taking over the healthcare system. These are the kinds of things that could be implemented. That's terrifying, right? I own stuff. People don't own what I own. Second, there is a global price on carbon. Oh, carbon tax. That could be a result of something like this, because after all, how is the government going to afford those bailouts? You know, those checks that we sent the American people? You know, those checks that we sent out to big business? Well, now we have to recoup some of that. So let's implement a carbon tax. Could it happen? Possibly. Third, U.S. dominance, and this one's terrifying, is over. United States dominance is over. We have a handful of global powers. In other words, this pandemic was targeted at the United States of America. That's why we have the most of everything, right? That's why they're inflating the death count, inflating the numbers. You can go to the CDC website and look it up. They're adding cases that shouldn't be added. You have AIDS, you should die of AIDS, not of COVID. They don't do that with the flu and AIDS, right? And another thing is they're saying we can assume that you have COVID, and that's counted in the death count. But I digress. They are using that to take over our economic system. Our economic system is crashing out of fear of this pandemic. And that's what's happening right now. And the seventh one here, I'm going to skip, and this is the final one. The values that built the West, that's America, will have been tested to a breaking point. In other words, no more capitalism. No more capitalism. Let's use this virus to usher in a complete socialist, communist style takeover. Isn't that eerie? That the World Economic Forum talked about that in 2016. Wink, wink. It's like they always know what's going to happen in the future. But it's not a coincidence, you see, because it's planned. It's all part of the plan. Anyhow, I love you guys, and please leave your comments and concerns. And don't forget to check out my partner at noblegoldinvestments.com. If you guys haven't converted your 401k into something backed by gold, silver, precious metals, I want to encourage you to do that. So take a look, give them a call today, and let them know Lisa Haven sent you. Well, thanks again for tuning in. I'm Lisa Haven, signing out.